In a small town where the pace of life was slow and people still greeted each other by name, there lived a mechanic named Tom. He wasn't famous or rich, but he had a good heart and believed in helping others whenever he could. His garage was modest, tucked between an old bakery and a flower shop, and it bore his name painted on the side, Tom's Garage. It wasn't much to look at from the outside, but inside every tool had its place and every customer left, feeling like they were treated fairly. One rainy afternoon, as the sky poured down heavy drops and the streets glistened with water, a woman arrived at Tom's garage pushing a young boy in a wheelchair. The boy looked about 10 years old with bright eyes that seemed to shine despite the gloomy weather. His chair, however, was clearly broken. One wheel wobbled, the seat was torn, and the frame creaked with every movement. The woman looked tired, her clothes damp from the rain, but her voice was firm when she asked if Tom could help. The boy's name was Ethan, and he had been born with a condition that made walking impossible. His wheelchair had served him for years, but now it had finally given out. They had gone to several places, but no one wanted to fix it without charging a high price they simply couldn't afford. As the mother spoke, Tom studied the chair closely. He could see what was wrong: a few bent metal parts, a worn-out wheel bearing, and some frayed padding. It would take time, but it was definitely fixable. Without hesitation, Tom told them not to worry. He said he would fix the chair right away and refused any payment. The woman tried to argue, saying she could at least pay for the parts, but Tom shook his head. He told her that no child should be stuck because of something that could be fixed. He wheeled the chair into his garage and got to work. For hours, Tom worked under the soft glow of the garage lights, tightening bolts, replacing worn-out pieces, and even reinforcing the frame so it would last longer. He didn't rush. He made sure everything was perfect, not just working again, but better than new. While he worked, he thought about how lucky he was to have 2 legs and strong hands. He thought about how many people struggled silently, unable to afford simple things that others took for granted. And he felt proud knowing he could do something to help. By the next day, the chair was ready. Tom called the mother and told her it was done. When she arrived with Ethan, their faces lit up with joy. Ethan sat back in his chair, testing the wheels, smiling as they spun smoothly without any noise. His mother hugged Tom tightly, tears in her eyes, thanking him over and over, but Tom just smiled and told them it was nothing. He meant it too. To him, it was just another job well done, except this time, it wasn't for money, it was for kindness. Days passed, and Tom went back to his usual routine: oil changes, tire rotations, fixing dents and scratches on cars that rolled in and out of his garage. He didn't think much about Ethan or the chair. He had helped many people before, and he would help many more in the future. That's just who he was. But fate has a way of rewarding those who give without expecting anything in return. One morning, just a few days after fixing the chair, Tom was wiping grease off his hands when a sleek black car pulled into his lot. 2 men stepped out, dressed in crisp suits that looked expensive. They walked toward him with calm confidence, and one of them held out a hand. "Mr. Tom?" he asked politely. Tom nodded, shaking the man's hand. "We're here on behalf of someone who heard about your kind act," the man continued. "Would you mind answering a few questions?" Tom agreed, curious but cautious. The men asked about the wheelchair, how he had fixed it, and why he had done it for free. Tom answered honestly. He just saw a need and filled it. He didn't expect praise or reward. The men nodded, exchanged a few quiet words, then handed Tom a sealed envelope. Before getting back into their car and driving off, confused, Tom opened the envelope. Inside was a letter printed on thick, elegant paper. It read that a private jet would arrive at the local airport in 2 days, and that Tom was invited to board it. The jet would take him to meet someone who wanted to personally thank him for his generosity. At first, Tom thought it was a joke. A private jet? For him? He had never even been on a commercial flight before. But the letter was real, signed by a name he recognized, Mr. Langford, a billionaire known for his charitable work across the country. Tom's hands trembled slightly as he read the letter again. He showed it to his wife, who gasped and insisted he go. She reminded him that sometimes life surprises you with moments that change everything. So, 2 days later, Tom found himself standing at the edge of a small airstrip, watching as a white jet landed smoothly on the runway. It was unlike anything he had ever seen up close, shiny, silent, and graceful. As he stepped aboard, he was greeted by a friendly crew who offered him drinks and snacks. He sat in a soft leather seat, unsure if he belonged there. The flight was short, maybe an hour or so, but for Tom, it felt like stepping into a different world. When they landed, a luxury car was waiting to take him to a grand estate overlooking the ocean. There, in a sunlit room filled with books and paintings, Mr. Langford greeted him warmly. He thanked Tom for what he had done, explaining that he had once been in Ethan's position as a child. His own nephew used a wheelchair, and he deeply respected those who gave selflessly. Then came the biggest surprise. Mr. Langford offered to fully fund college educations for both of Tom's daughters. Tears welled up in Tom's eyes. He had never asked for anything. He had only wanted to help a boy get back on his feet. Literally. And now someone he had never met was giving him a gift that would change his family's future forever. When Tom returned home, he felt like a new man. Not because of the trip or the offer, but because he realized that kindness truly does ripple outward. You never know how far a single good deed can travel, or who might notice. And as he stood in his garage, tools in hand and heart full of hope, he knew one thing for certain: doing the right thing always matters. Tom sat in stunned silence after Mr. Langford made his offer. His daughter's college education, fully paid. It sounded too good to be true. He looked around the grand room, the sunlight streaming through tall windows, expensive paintings on the walls, and soft music playing in the background. This was not a place for someone like him. He was just a mechanic from a small town who fixed cars and helped people when he could. Mr. Langford smiled gently, as if reading Tom's thoughts. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said calmly. "Just know that this is my way of saying thank you. You did something kind without expecting anything in return. That's rare these days." Tom swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. I don't even know what to say," he finally managed. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Mr. Langford nodded and gestured toward a table where lunch had been set out. "Let's eat first," he said. "We can talk more after." Over lunch, the two men spoke about life, family, and the importance of helping others. Mr. Langford shared stories of his own childhood, how he had grown up poor and worked his way up through sheer determination. He told Tom how he believed in giving back whenever possible, and how he admired people like him, ordinary folks doing extraordinary things. As they talked, Tom began to relax. He realized that Mr. Langford wasn't just some rich man handing out favors. He was genuine. He truly cared about making a difference. After lunch, Mr. Langford showed Tom around his estate. There was a large garden filled with blooming flowers, a private library stacked with books, and a playroom where his nephew, a young boy in a wheelchair, played quietly. The boy looked up at Tom with curious eyes, and Mr. Langford introduced them. "This is my nephew Jacob," he said. "He uses a chair just like Ethan." Tom crouched down to Jacob's level and gave him a warm smile. "Hey there, buddy," he said. "I bet your chair works real well, huh?" Jacob grinned and nodded. "Yeah, Uncle Jack makes sure it's always perfect." Tom chuckled. "Well, that's good. Every kid deserves a smooth ride." Mr. Langford watched the exchange with a proud look on his face. When they walked away, he turned to Tom and said, "That's why I do what I do. Because I know how important it is for kids like Jacob and Ethan to have every chance in life." By the time the day ended, Tom felt like he had known Mr. Langford for years. As he boarded the private jet for the flight home, he stared out the window, watching the world shrink beneath him. He thought about his wife, his daughters, and the life they had built together. He thought about Ethan and his mother, and how happy they would be when he told them what had happened. The next few days passed in a blur. Word spread quickly through the town about Tom's unexpected journey. People came by his garage just to shake his hand or bring him food. Some asked questions, others simply wanted to express their admiration. But Tom remained humble. He kept working, fixing cars, and helping anyone who needed it. Then one morning, a reporter from a national news station showed up at his garage. She introduced herself and explained that her team had heard about Tom's story and wanted to share it with the world. Tom hesitated at first. He didn't want to become famous or get special treatment. But the reporter assured him that it wasn't about making him a hero. It was about showing people that kindness still exists. So, with a bit of nervousness, Tom agreed. The crew set up cameras and microphones, and soon the quiet garage was buzzing with activity. They filmed Tom working on a car, talking to customers, and even visited Ethan and his mother. The final piece aired a week later, and overnight, everything changed. Tom's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Emails poured in, from all over the country. Some people sent donations, while others offered job opportunities or scholarships for his daughters. A few companies reached out asking if he wanted to open a chain of repair shops or start a charity focused on helping disabled children. It was overwhelming. At first, Tom didn't know how to handle it all. He was used to a simple life, not being in the spotlight. He talked to his wife about it late one night, sitting at the kitchen table with cups of tea between them. "I never wanted any of this," he admitted. "I just wanted to help a little boy." His wife took his hand and smiled, softly. "And you did," she said. "Now the whole world knows what a good heart you have. Maybe this is your chance to help even more people." Tom thought about her words for a long time, and slowly an idea began to form. A few weeks later, Tom announced the launch of a new project, a free repair service for mobility devices. He called it Roll With Us. Anyone who couldn't afford to fix their wheelchair, walker, or scooter could bring it to his garage, and he and a team of volunteers would take care of it. No charge. At first, it was just Tom and a few local helpers. But as word spread, more mechanics joined in. Donations started coming in from across the country, allowing Tom to buy better tools and even rent a bigger space. What began as a single act of kindness had turned into a movement. Ethan and his mother were among the first to benefit again. Ethan's chair had taken a beating after months of use, but Tom fixed it within a day. When Ethan rolled back into the garage, laughing and spinning in circles, everyone clapped and cheered. It became common to see kids zooming around the shop, testing their chairs after repairs. Parents would sit nearby, chatting and thanking Tom for what he had done. Sometimes, he would overhear them telling their children, "See? Not everyone wants money, some people just want to help." Tom loved those moments most of all. One afternoon, while working on a broken scooter, Tom received a surprise visit from Mr. Langford. He arrived in a modest car this time, dressed casually, and walked into the garage like an old friend. "Look at you," Mr. Langford said with a grin, looking around at the busy workshop. "You've built something amazing here." Tom wiped his hands on a rag and shook Mr. Langford's hand. "Thanks to you," he said. "If you hadn't stepped in, none of this would be possible." Mr. Langford waved off the praise. "No, Tom, this is all you. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it and made something great." They spent the afternoon talking, walking through the shop, and meeting the people whose lives had been touched by Tom's work. At one point, Mr. Langford pulled out a check and handed it to Tom. "For the future," he said simply. Tom looked at the amount and nearly dropped the paper. It was enough to expand the program, hire more staff, and maybe even open another location in a different town. Tears welled in Tom's eyes again. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. Mr. Langford patted him on the back. "Say yes," he said with a smile. As the sun set behind the garage, casting golden light across the parking lot, Tom stood outside, watching Ethan race his repaired chair down the sidewalk with a group of other kids chasing after him. Laughter filled the air, and for the first time in a long while, Tom felt completely at peace. He had started with a single act of kindness. Now, he had built something far greater than himself. And as he looked out at the growing community around him, he knew that this was only the beginning. Tom's life had changed in ways he never imagined. What started as a quiet existence running a small garage had turned into something much bigger than just fixing cars. The Roll With Us program was growing fast, and people from all over the country were reaching out to see how they could help or get involved. Tom found himself giving interviews, speaking at local schools, and even appearing on a national talk show where he shared his story with millions of viewers. At first, the attention felt strange. He wasn't used to cameras flashing every time he stepped outside or strangers recognizing him at the grocery store. But he learned to embrace it. If his story could inspire others to do good, then maybe all the attention was worth it. Back at the garage, things were busier than ever. A group of retired mechanics had volunteered their time, offering to help repair more chairs each week. A local high school even started a student club called Wheels for Change, where students helped clean and organize donated equipment. Tom couldn't believe how many people wanted to be part of what he had started. One day, a young woman named Lila showed up at the garage. She was in her early 20s and walked with a limp. She explained that she had grown up using a walker, but had recently switched to a wheelchair after surgery. Her chair had broken, and she didn't have the money to fix it. Tom welcomed her inside, took one look at the chair, and told her not to worry. He'd take care of it. While working on the chair, Tom asked Lila about her life. She told him she was studying to become a nurse and worked part-time at a hospital. Despite her disability, she was determined to live a full life and help others. Tom was deeply moved by her spirit. After finishing the repairs, he offered her a job helping manage the growing number of donations and appointments at the garage. Lila accepted immediately. Soon she became an essential part of the team, handling paperwork, organizing events, and even reaching out to other towns to spread awareness about the program. Thanks to her efforts, Roll With Us expanded beyond their town, and soon, other mechanics across the state were offering free repairs for mobility devices in their own communities. As the months passed, the impact of Tom's work grew. Children who once struggled to move around their schools now had reliable chairs. Elderly people who had given up hope of getting their walkers fixed found new life in their old devices. And parents who had worried endlessly about the cost of repairs breathed easier knowing there was someone like Tom looking out for them. But not everything was smooth sailing. Running such a large operation came with challenges. There were days when the demand was overwhelming, and Tom barely had time to eat. Some people tried to take advantage of the free service, bringing in expensive chairs that clearly didn't belong to them. And there were times when Tom doubted whether he could keep up with everything. During those tough moments, he would remember why he started this journey. Because no child should be stuck. No person should suffer in silence, and kindness, once set in motion, has a way of spreading far beyond what anyone can predict. Then came the biggest surprise yet. One morning, Tom opened his mailbox and pulled out a thick envelope. The return address was unfamiliar, but the logo printed on the corner caught his eye. It belonged to a major global charity organization known for supporting disability rights. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a letter, stating that the organization had been following his work and was impressed by the impact he had made. They were offering to fund a nationwide expansion of Roll With Us. That meant opening repair centers in major cities, hiring full-time staff, and providing training to mechanics who wanted to join the cause. Tom read the letter twice before allowing himself to believe it. He rushed inside and showed it to his wife, who burst into tears. Their dream of helping even more people was becoming real. With the support of the charity, Tom began planning the next phase of his mission. He hired a small team of coordinators and started scouting locations for new repair centers. He also launched an online platform where people could request help, donate equipment, or volunteer their time. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, hundreds of volunteers signed up. Donated wheelchairs and walkers arrived by the truckload. Mechanics from across the country reached out, eager to lend their skills. Tom traveled to different cities, meeting with community leaders and setting up workshops where he taught others how to start similar programs. He spoke at conferences, sharing his belief that kindness and skill could come together to change lives. Through it all, he remained grounded. He still spent time in his original garage, fixing chairs and chatting with families. He made sure to personally thank every volunteer and donor, no matter how small their contribution. One afternoon, while working on a chair for a little girl named Mia, he noticed a familiar face watching from the doorway. It was Ethan, now older and taller, standing proudly beside his mother. He had grown so much since the day Tom first fixed his chair. "I'm walking now," Ethan said with a big grin. "Well, kind of. I use crutches sometimes." Tom looked up, eyes wide with joy. "That's amazing, buddy. You've come so far." Ethan nodded. "Mom says it's because of you." Tom shook his head. "No, it's because of you. You're the one who kept fighting." Ethan's mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "We just wanted to say thank you again," she said softly. "You gave him a chance to keep going. And now, look at him." Tom stood up and gave both of them a warm hug. In that moment, he realized that this was the true reward, not the fame, not the donations, but seeing the people he helped grow, heal, and thrive. As Ethan wheeled his crutches toward the door, he turned back and waved. "See you later, Mr. Tom." Tom smiled and waved back. "Anytime, buddy, anytime." Outside, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the garage. Inside, laughter echoed as volunteers worked side by side, repairing chairs and building futures. Tom looked around at the place that had become so much more than a workshop. It was now a home for hope, healing, and heart. And he knew, without a doubt, that this was exactly where he was meant to be. Tom's life had become a whirlwind of activity, but through it all, he never lost sight of the simple joy that came from helping others. The garage was no longer just a place where cars were fixed. It had transformed into a bustling community center filled with laughter, gratitude, and hope. People came not only for repairs but to share their stories, offer help, and find comfort in knowing there was a place where kindness ruled over money. One chilly morning, as frost covered the windshield of every car in town, Tom arrived at the garage earlier than usual. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and flipped on the lights. The smell of oil and metal greeted him like an old friend. As he walked past rows of tools neatly lined up on the walls, he noticed something strange near the front window. A large box wrapped in bright red paper and tied with a golden ribbon. Curious, Tom walked over and picked up the card attached to the bow. It read, "To the man who gave us hope. Thank you." There was no name, just a small drawing of a wheelchair rolling forward with a smiley face. He carefully opened the box and found a brand new set of high-quality tools inside, the kind professional mechanics dreamed of owning. Each tool gleamed under the garage lights, perfectly organized and ready to use. Tom ran his fingers over the handles, feeling the smooth weight of them in his hands. He couldn't believe someone had gone out of their way to thank him like this. The mystery deepened when more gifts began arriving in the following weeks. One day, a delivery truck pulled up outside the garage carrying several boxes of donated wheelchairs and walkers. Another time, a local restaurant dropped off a huge order of hot meals for everyone working at the shop. And once, Tom found a handmade thank you poster signed by dozens of children whose chairs he had fixed. These surprises reminded Tom that while he had started this journey alone, he was no longer walking it by himself. Every act of kindness he had given had come back to him tenfold, multiplied by the love and support of the people around him. As the Roll With Us program expanded across the country, Tom found himself traveling more often. He visited repair centers in different cities, met with volunteers, and even appeared on a national television special about everyday heroes. But no matter how far he went or how many people recognized his face, he always returned home with the same humble heart. One of his most memorable trips took him to a small town in the mountains where a young girl named Priya lived. She used a broken scooter to get around, her only means of mobility after losing the use of her legs in an accident. Her family couldn't afford repairs, and she hadn't been able to attend school for months. When Tom arrived, he met Priya sitting on the porch of her home watching birds fly overhead. She looked shy at first, but her eyes lit up when he introduced himself. He spent the entire day fixing her scooter, making sure every wheel turned smoothly and every handle was secure. By the end of the day, Priya was zooming around the yard with a big grin on her face. She hugged Tom tightly before saying, "You made me feel like I can do anything again." Tears welled up in Tom's eyes. He knelt down and said, "That's because you can." Later that evening, as he sat with Priya's parents at their kitchen table, they thanked him for what he had done. Her father, a quiet man with calloused hands from years of hard work, spoke softly. "People like you are rare," he said. "You don't just fix things, you fix lives." Tom didn't respond right away. He simply nodded, letting the words sink in. He had heard similar things before, but hearing them here in this tiny mountain town made them feel even more powerful. Back home, Tom continued his work with renewed energy. He hired more staff, trained new volunteers, and worked closely with schools and hospitals to identify families in need. The garage became a symbol of hope, a place where anyone could walk in or roll in and leave feeling like they mattered, but not all days were easy. There were times when Tom felt overwhelmed. Some mornings he woke up exhausted, unsure if he could keep up with everything. Some nights he lay awake wondering if he was doing enough or if he was failing someone somewhere. Running such a large operation meant dealing with endless paperwork, unexpected breakdowns, and sometimes heartbreaking situations that weighed heavily on his heart. During one particularly tough week, Tom received a letter from a mother whose son had passed away shortly after receiving a repaired chair. She wrote that even though her son was gone, she would always be grateful for the time he had gained thanks to Tom's help. Reading that letter brought tears to his eyes, but it also reminded him that even in sadness, his work had meaning. He shared the letter with his team during one of their weekly meetings. They sat together in silence for a moment, honoring the boy's memory. Then one of the volunteers, a retired nurse named Clara, spoke up. "We're not just fixing chairs," she said gently. "We're giving people time to live, time to grow, time to say goodbye." Her words stayed with Tom long after the meeting ended. Despite the challenges, the momentum kept building. A documentary crew followed Tom for several months, capturing the impact of his work. When the film aired, it touched millions of viewers. Donations poured in from across the world. New repair centers opened in places Tom had never imagined reaching. Rural villages, inner-city neighborhoods, even overseas communities. Through it all, Tom remained grounded. He still wore his worn-out work boots, still drank coffee from the same chipped mug every morning, and still made time to personally meet every person who walked through his garage doors. And then, one day, another surprise came knocking. A knock sounded at the garage door early one morning. Tom opened it to find a teenage boy standing there holding a backpack and looking nervous. The boy introduced himself as Ryan, a high school senior interested in becoming a mechanic. He explained that he had read about Tom's work online and wanted to learn from him. Tom welcomed him inside without hesitation. Over the next few months, Ryan became part of the team, learning everything from basic repairs to customer service. He soaked up knowledge like a sponge, asking questions and staying late to help finish jobs. At the end of the summer, Ryan handed Tom a folded piece of paper. It was a college acceptance letter. He had been accepted into a top automotive engineering program. He told Tom that working at the garage had inspired him to pursue a career where he could help people through his skills. Tom read the letter twice, pride swelling in his chest. He placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder and said, "You're going to do great things." Ryan smiled. "I learned from the best." As Ryan walked away, Tom stood in the doorway watching him go. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the town. Birds chirped in the trees, and the familiar hum of the garage came alive behind him. In that moment, Tom realized something important. His legacy wasn't just in the chairs he fixed or the lives he touched. It was in the people who carried his mission forward, in the young minds inspired by his example, and in the belief that one good deed could change the world. And so, with a steady heart and a determined spirit, Tom stepped back inside the garage, ready to begin another day of work and another day of making a difference. Years passed, but the heart of Tom's garage never changed. The tools were newer, the space was bigger, and the team had grown into a family of volunteers, mechanics, and helpers from all walks of life. But every morning, when the sun rose and birds chirped outside the shop, Tom still walked in with the same purpose, to help someone who needed it. The Roll With Us program had become more than just a local effort. It was now a nationwide movement. Repair centers opened in cities, far and wide, each one following the same simple rule. No one gets turned away because they can't pay. Thousands of wheelchairs, walkers, and scooters were fixed every year, giving people back their freedom, dignity, and hope. Tom often thought about how it had all started, with Ethan, a broken chair, and a rainy afternoon. He remembered the joy on the boy's face when he rolled out of the garage smooth as new. And now, years later, Ethan was not only walking with the help of crutches but studying engineering in college, working toward designing better mobility devices for the future. Sometimes Ethan would visit the garage during school breaks, helping out where he could. He brought ideas, energy, and a deep understanding of what people truly needed. Tom loved seeing him work alongside the younger volunteers, passing down knowledge and kindness like a torch lighting the way. One day, while Tom was tightening a tow-a bolt on a scooter, Ethan walked up with a big grin. "Guess what?" he said excitedly. "What?" Tom asked, wiping grease off his hands. "I got an internship," Ethan replied, "with a company that makes smart wheelchairs." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Smart chairs?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, ones that use sensors and voice control. They're trying to make them more affordable so everyone can have access." Tom smiled proudly. "That sounds amazing, buddy. You'll change the world." Ethan laughed. "Only if you keep fixing the old ones until I finish building the new ones." They both chuckled, and Tom patted Ethan on the back before returning to work. That was the beauty of it all. The past and future working side by side, each supporting the other. Back in town, the community around the garage continued to grow. Parents brought their kids to volunteer. High school students earned service hours by cleaning and organizing equipment, and even retired doctors offered their time to help assess which repairs were most urgent. Tom never stopped being amazed by the kindness of others. He had always believed that people wanted to do good. They just needed a reason to start. And now, thanks to the path he had walked, many had found their own reasons. Then came another turning point, a documentary. Film crew had been following Tom's journey for months, capturing moments of struggle, joy, and transformation. When the film finally aired, it reached millions of viewers across the globe. People wrote letters, sent donations, and shared their own stories of how they had helped someone in need after hearing about Tom. In one letter, a young man from another country described how he had started a similar repair service in his village using parts from old machines. In another, a nurse wrote about how she had begun carrying basic repair kits in her bag to help patients on the go. And in yet another, a group of teenagers explained how they had raised money to buy a used van and travel through their city fixing broken chairs. Tom read every message, sometimes with tears in his eyes. He wasn't just fixing chairs anymore. He had sparked a movement that stretched beyond borders, beyond language, beyond anything he had ever imagined. But with growth came challenges. Running such a large operation meant dealing with constant demands. More chairs to fix, more volunteers to train, more funding to secure. Some days Tom felt like he was running in circles, barely keeping up. There were times when exhaustion took over and doubt crept in. Was he doing enough? Were they reaching everyone who needed help? During one particularly rough week, when several repair centers faced supply shortages and a few volunteers had to step back due to personal struggles, Tom sat alone in the garage long after everyone had gone home. The lights were dim, the air was quiet, and the only sound was the soft ticking of the wall clock. He stared at his hands, calloused and worn from years of work, and wondered if he was still making a difference. Then, a knock came at the door. It was late, almost midnight, and Tom was surprised to see someone there. He opened the door to find a young woman standing in the cold, holding a duffel bag and a small child wrapped tightly in a blanket. "Are you Mr. Tom?" she asked softly. Tom nodded. "Yes, I am." She looked tired but hopeful. "I heard about your garage. My son's wheelchair broke last week and we've tried everywhere. No one could help us." Tom stepped aside and gestured for them to come in. "Of course," he said gently. "Let's get him something that works." As he examined the chair, he saw that it was older, with worn-out wheels and a bent frame. It would take some time, but it was fixable. He got to work right away, adjusting the alignment, replacing the damaged parts, and testing it carefully before handing it back to the boy. The child's face lit up as he rolled forward, smiling widely. His mother hugged Tom tightly, whispering, "Thank you. We didn't know where else to go." That moment reminded Tom why he kept going. No matter how big the movement grew, it always came back to this: one person helping another, one chair at a time. The next morning, he stood outside the garage watching the sunrise. Birds flew overhead, and the first volunteers began arriving, ready for another day of work. The smell of coffee filled the air, and laughter echoed from inside as friends greeted each other. Tom smiled, feeling peace settle in his chest. This was his life now. Not fame, not fortune, but purpose. And as long as there were people who needed help, he would be there, tool in hand, heart full of hope, and a mission that would never end. Years passed, but the heart of Tom's garage never changed. The tools were newer, the space was bigger, and the team had grown into a family of volunteers, mechanics, and helpers from all walks of life. But every morning, when the sun rose and birds chirped outside the shop, Tom still walked in with the same purpose: to help someone who needed it. The Roll With Us program had become more than just a local effort. It was now a nationwide movement. Repair centers opened in cities, far and wide, each one following the same simple rule: no one gets turned away because they can't pay. Thousands of wheelchairs, walkers, and scooters were fixed every year, giving people back their freedom, dignity, and hope. Tom often thought about how it had all started, with Ethan, a broken chair, and a rainy afternoon. He remembered the joy on the boy's face when he rolled out of the garage smooth as new. And now, years later, Ethan was not only walking with the help of crutches but studying engineering in college, working toward designing better mobility devices for the future. Sometimes Ethan would visit the garage during school breaks, helping out where he could. He brought ideas, energy, and a deep understanding of what people truly needed. Tom loved seeing him work alongside the younger volunteers, passing down knowledge and kindness like a torch lighting the way. One day, while Tom was tightening a tow bolt on a scooter, Ethan walked up with a big grin. "Guess what?" he said excitedly. "What?" Tom asked, wiping grease off his hands. "I got an internship," Ethan replied, "with a company that makes smart wheelchairs." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Smart chairs?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, ones that use sensors and voice control. They're trying to make them more affordable so everyone can have access." Tom smiled proudly. "That sounds amazing, buddy. You'll change the world." Ethan laughed. "Only if you keep fixing the old ones until I finish building the new ones." They both chuckled, and Tom patted Ethan on the back before returning to work. That was the beauty of it all. The past and future working side by side, each supporting the other. Back in town, the community around the garage continued to grow. Parents brought their kids to volunteer. High school students earned service hours by cleaning and organizing equipment, and even retired doctors offered their time to help assess which repairs were most urgent. Tom never stopped being amazed by the kindness of others. He had always believed that people wanted to do good. They just needed a reason to start. And now, thanks to the path he had walked, many had found their own reasons. Then came another turning point, a documentary. Film crew had been following Tom's journey for months, capturing moments of struggle, joy, and transformation. When the film finally aired, it reached millions of viewers across the globe. People wrote letters, sent donations, and shared their own stories of how they had helped someone in need after hearing about Tom. In one letter, a young man from another country described how he had started a similar repair service in his village using parts from old machines. In another, a nurse wrote about how she had begun carrying basic repair kits in her bag to help patients on the go. And in yet another, a group of teenagers explained how they had raised money to buy a used van and travel through their city fixing broken chairs. Tom read every message, sometimes with tears in his eyes. He wasn't just fixing chairs anymore. He had sparked a movement that stretched beyond borders, beyond language, beyond anything he had ever imagined. But with growth came challenges. Running such a large operation meant dealing with constant demands. More chairs to fix, more volunteers to train, more funding to secure. Some days Tom felt like he was running in circles, barely keeping up. There were times when exhaustion took over and doubt crept in. Was he doing enough? Were they reaching everyone who needed help? During one particularly rough week, when several repair centers faced supply shortages and a few volunteers had to step back due to personal struggles, Tom sat alone in the garage long after everyone had gone home. The lights were dim, the air was quiet, and the only sound was the soft ticking of the wall clock. He stared at his hands, calloused and worn from years of work, and wondered if he was still making a difference. Then, a knock came at the door. It was late, almost midnight, and Tom was surprised to see someone there. He opened the door to find a young woman standing in the cold, holding a duffel bag and a small child wrapped tightly in a blanket. "Are you Mr. Tom?" she asked softly. Tom nodded. "Yes, I am." She looked tired but hopeful. "I heard about your garage. My son's wheelchair broke last week and we've tried everywhere. No one could help us." Tom stepped aside and gestured for them to come in. "Of course," he said gently. "Let's get him something that works." As he examined the chair, he saw that it was older, with worn-out wheels and a bent frame. It would take some time, but it was fixable. He got to work right away, adjusting the alignment, replacing the damaged parts and testing it carefully before handing it back to the boy. The child's face lit up as he rolled forward, smiling widely. His mother hugged Tom tightly, whispering, "Thank you. We didn't know where else to go." That moment reminded Tom why he kept going. No matter how big the movement grew, it always came back to this: one person helping another, one chair at a time. The next morning, he stood outside the garage watching the sunrise. Birds flew overhead, and the first volunteers began arriving, ready for another day of work. The smell of coffee filled the air, and laughter echoed from inside as friends greeted each other. Tom smiled, feeling peace settle in his chest. This was his life now. Not fame, not fortune, but purpose. And as long as there were people who needed help, he would be there, tool in hand, heart full of hope, and a mission that would never end.